The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Aurora. Commander Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the blue and green planet below. Proxima Centauri. B. Humanity's first colony beyond Earth's solar system. After 6 months of travel, they had finally arrived. Behind him, the crew worked to prepare the landing shuttles. 300 colonists waited in cryo-sleep, ready to wake up and start their new lives. Jake felt pride swelling in his chest. This was history. This was the moment humanity truly became a spacefaring species. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Chris Baker from the communications station. "It's not from Earth." Jake turned quickly. "What do you mean? The signal is coming from outside the system. And sir, it's in English." A chill ran down Jake's spine. They were supposed to be alone out here. Earth's telescopes had never detected any signs of alien life in this region. He walked to the communications panel and nodded. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was not human. It had a strange echo, like multiple voices speaking at once. But the words were clear enough. "Human vessel Aurora, you have entered restricted space. You are ordered to power down your engines and await inspection by the Galactic Council. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your ship." The bridge went silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing and stared at the speakers. Jake felt his mouth go dry. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Aurora. We come in peace. We were not aware this system was claimed by anyone. Ignorance is not an excuse. You will comply or be destroyed. You have 1 hour." The transmission ended. Jake looked around at his crew. Fear showed on every face. They were alone, light years from home, and they had just made first contact with an alien species that seemed very unfriendly. "Send a priority message to Earth," Jake ordered. "Tell them everything. Then prepare the crew for possible combat." The message took over 4 years to reach Earth at light speed, but humanity had developed faster than light communication through quantum entanglement. Within minutes, Earth received the news. Within hours, the United Space Command had mobilized every ship they had. On Earth, Linda Hayes sat in the conference room of the United Space Command headquarters in Geneva. She had been Earth's chief diplomat for 12 years. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth. They all looked as shocked as she felt. "And we need to respond carefully," Linda said. "This could be a misunderstanding. Maybe they don't realize we're a peaceful species." General Marcus Cole shook his head. "Peaceful species don't send ultimatums threatening destruction. They've already shown us what they think of us." Before Linda could respond, the room's main screen activated. An alien face appeared. It was tall and thin, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. Its skin looked like polished stone. And when it spoke, its mouth barely moved. "I am Krelthar, Supreme Arbiter of the Galactic Council. I address the leaders of the species you call human." Linda stood up. "I am Linda Hayes, representing Earth's unified government. We wish to establish peaceful relations with the Galactic Council." "Peace comes through obedience," Krelthar said. His voice was cold and final. "Your species has violated the doctrine of controlled ascension. You have left your home system without permission from the Council. This cannot be allowed." 17.5. "Permission?" Linda felt anger rising in her chest. "We didn't know you existed. How could we ask for permission?" Ignorance does not excuse violation. The doctrine has governed this galaxy for 10,000 years. All species must follow it. Young races like yours are dangerous. You must be controlled until you prove yourselves worthy of joining galactic civilization." General Cole stepped forward. "And how exactly do we prove ourselves worthy?" "You will dismantle all colonies beyond your home system. You will surrender all military vessels to Council custody. You will accept technological restrictions that we will enforce. You will do this within 72 hours or we will consider it an act of war." The room erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted objections in a dozen languages. Linda raised her hand for silence. "You're asking us to give up our freedom, to become prisoners in our own solar system. We are offering you a chance to survive," Krelthar said. "Thousands of species have accepted these terms. Those who refused no longer exist. You have 72 hours. The screen went dark. Linda looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Fear mixed with anger on every face. For thousands of years, humanity had fought wars over freedom and independence. They had overthrown empires and dictators. They had bled and died for the right to determine their own fate. "We need to vote," said the Chinese representative. "This affects all of humanity." The vote took 6 hours. Representatives argued, debated, and consulted with their governments. Linda watched the clock counting down. Finally, the votes were cast. The result was almost unanimous. Earth would refuse the Council's ultimatum. Linda recorded the response message herself. She chose her words carefully, knowing that they might lead to war. "Supreme Arbiter Krelthar, we have considered your demands. We reject them. Humanity claims the right to explore space freely and to determine our own future. We seek peaceful coexistence with all species, but we will not surrender our freedom. We hope you will reconsider your position." The message was sent. Now they could only wait. On the Aurora, Jake Morrison had successfully evacuated all colonists to the planet's surface. They built a small base in record time, working day and night. Jake knew that if war came, the Aurora would be the first target. He wanted his people safe on the ground, where they could hide if necessary. 72 hours passed. Jake stood in the Aurora's bridge, watching the sensors. Then, they appeared. Dozens of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Council fleet had arrived. "Count them," Jake ordered. 47 warships, Chris Baker reported. "They're 3 times the size of the Aurora." "Sir, we can't fight that many," Jake nodded slowly. "Get me a line to Earth, and power up all weapons. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." On Earth, General Cole watched the same sensor data. The Council had sent nearly 50 ships to crush one human colony. It was meant to be a message, a show of overwhelming force. But humanity had a message of their own to send. In orbit around Earth, 30 warships powered up their engines. The UESC Defiant led the fleet, commanded by Captain Ryan Foster. It would take them 2 weeks to reach Proxima Centauri through faster-than-light travel. The Council expected an easy victory. They expected humanity to see their fleet and surrender in fear. They had conquered hundreds of worlds this way. The sight of the Council Armada had always been enough to break the spirit of any opposition, but the Council had never faced humans before. They didn't understand what they had awakened. They didn't know that humanity had spent thousands of years fighting wars against themselves. They didn't know that humans had learned to fight with a desperation and creativity that came from being a species that had almost destroyed itself dozens of times. The Council thought they were teaching a lesson to primitive upstarts. What they were actually doing was declaring war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They just didn't know it yet. Admiral Krevzan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He had commanded Council fleets for over 200 years. In that time, he had never lost a single battle. He didn't expect today to be any different. "Status report," he ordered his tactical officer. "The human colony ship is still in orbit. No reinforcements detected. Their weapons are primitive kinetic launchers and chemical explosives. Their shields are barely functional." Krevzan allowed himself a small smile. This would be over quickly. Open a channel to the human ship. On the Aurora's bridge, Jake Morrison straightened his uniform as the alien admiral's face appeared on the screen. Krevzan looked like a massive insect, with multiple arms and compound eyes that glittered in the light. "Human commander, you will surrender your vessel immediately. Resistance is futile." We outnumber you 47-1. Jake took a deep breath. His hands were shaking, but he kept his voice steady. We gave you our answer on Earth. This is your last chance to leave peacefully. Krevzon's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. You dare threaten us? Your species has barely left its homeworld. We have ruled this galaxy for millennia. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Go to hell, Jake said quietly, and cut the transmission. Krevzon stared at the blank screen. In 200 years, no one had ever spoken to him that way. His anger flared hot and bright. All ships, open fire. Destroy that vessel. The Council fleet launched their attack. 47 ships fired plasma weapons simultaneously. Bright green bolts of superheated matter streaked across space toward the Aurora. The bridge crew watched death approaching and knew they had only seconds to live. Then the Aurora's shields flared to life. The plasma bolts hit the shield and scattered. Some penetrated through, scorching the Aurora's hull, but the ship held together. Impossible, Krevzon whispered. On the Aurora, sparks flew from damaged consoles. 3 crew members lay injured. But they were alive. Dr. Helen Park had spent the last 2 weeks modifying the shields, layering them in ways the Council had never seen before. It was crude and inefficient, but it worked. Return fire, Jake ordered. The Aurora's railguns opened up. Depleted uranium slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They weren't as fast as energy weapons, but they hit with devastating kinetic force. The first slug punched through the shields of the nearest Council ship like they weren't even there. The projectile tore through the hull, through the ship's reactor, and out the other side. The Council ship exploded in a ball of fire. What just happened? Krevzon demanded. How did they penetrate our shields? His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. Admiral, their weapons are solid projectiles. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons. We have no defense against kinetic attacks of this magnitude. Krevzon felt ice forming in his stomach. In 10,000 years of galactic warfare, no one used kinetic weapons anymore. They were considered primitive and inefficient. The Council's shields had been designed to stop plasma, lasers, and particle beams. No one had thought about defending against metal slugs. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. All ships scatter and return fire. But the Council fleet was designed for formal battle formations. Their ships were large and slow. They weren't built to dodge. The Aurora fired again and again. Each shot found its target. 2 more Council ships exploded. Another took critical damage and began drifting, its engines dead. Then the Aurora launched missiles. Nuclear warheads streaked toward the Council fleet. Krevzon watched in horror as his point defense systems tried to shoot them down. They destroyed most of them, but 3 got through. The nuclear explosions lit up space like small suns. The electromagnetic pulses scrambled sensors across the Council fleet. When the light faded, 4 more Council ships were burning wrecks. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel, Krevzon screamed. I want it destroyed now. The entire Council fleet turned their weapons on the Aurora. Thousands of plasma bolts filled space. This time, the Aurora's shields couldn't hold. They flickered and died. Plasma bolts tore into the hull. Explosions ripped through multiple decks. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Chris Baker shouted. Engineering is offline. We've lost main power. Jake knew it was over. Evacuate the ship. Everyone to the escape pods. Now. The crew abandoned ship in an orderly fashion, just as they had trained. Jake was the last one to leave. As his escape pod fell toward the planet below, he watched the Aurora die. Plasma fire tore her apart piece by piece until nothing remained but debris. Krevzon watched the human ship's destruction with grim satisfaction. That's what happens to those who defy the Council. Scan for survivors and destroy any escape pods. Admiral, we have new contacts, his tactical officer said. Multiple ships, dropping out of faster than light. At the edge of the system. More humans? Krevzon pulled up the sensor display. 30 human warships had just arrived. Impossible. They shouldn't have ships this far from their homeworld. The human fleet spread out in a loose formation. They didn't advance toward the Council fleet. Instead, they moved toward the asteroid belt that ringed the inner system. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the UESC Defiant. He was younger than most ship captains, only 35 years old, but he had studied military history his entire life. He knew every battle humanity had ever fought. And he knew that when facing a superior force, you didn't fight. Fair. All ships, fall back to the asteroid field, he ordered. Use the rocks for cover. Hit and run tactics only. Don't let them pin you down. The Council fleet pursued. Krevzon was angry now. These humans had destroyed 8 of his ships. 8. That was more losses than the Council had suffered in the last 1,000 years combined. He wanted revenge, but as his fleet entered the asteroid field, everything changed. The human ships darted between the massive rocks, using them as shields. They would appear, fire their railguns and missiles, then disappear behind cover before the Council could return fire effectively. It was like fighting ghosts. Every time Krevzon's ships thought they had a target, it vanished. And every few minutes, another Council ship took critical damage from kinetic weapons they couldn't defend against. This is dishonorable combat, Krevzon's tactical officer said. They're using the terrain to hide. They won't face us in open battle. I don't care about honor. Krevzon snarled. I want them dead. All ships, pursue into the asteroid field. It was a mistake. The Council's large ships had trouble maneuvering between the asteroids. They collided with rocks, damaging their hulls. The human ships, smaller and more agile, had no such problems. Captain Foster watched from the Defiant as the Council fleet blundered into his trap. Now, he said quietly, spring it. The human ships had spent the last hour attaching nuclear mines to key asteroids. Now, they detonated them. Massive rocks shattered into billions of fragments that tore through the Council fleet like shrapnel. Ships that survived the initial blast found themselves surrounded by debris moving at lethal speeds. More Council ships died. Their shields couldn't stop the physical impacts. Hulls cracked. Life support failed. Crews died. In the cold vacuum of space, Krevzon finally understood. These humans weren't fighting like the Council fought. They weren't following the ancient rules of warfare that had governed galactic conflicts for thousands of years. They were fighting to win by any means necessary. Retreat, he ordered. All ships, fall back to the edge of the system. The Council fleet limped away from the asteroid field. Of the 47 ships that had arrived, only 31 remained functional. 16 ships destroyed or crippled by a force less than half their size. Captain Foster didn't pursue. He had won this battle, but he knew the war was just beginning. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we held Proxima Centauri, and tell them to prepare. The Council won't make the same mistakes twice. On his flagship, Krevzon stared at the casualty reports. Thousands dead. Billions worth of ships destroyed. And for what? To punish one small colony? He sent his own report back to the Council chambers. In it, he tried to explain what had happened. He tried to describe how the humans fought without honor, without following any of the established rules of engagement. He tried to warn them that this species was different from anything the Council had encountered before. But Krevzon knew they wouldn't listen. The Council was too proud, too certain of their superiority. They would send more ships, more firepower. They would escalate until humanity was crushed beneath their might. What Krevzon didn't know was that humanity would escalate too. And humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of escalation. The news of the Council's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the grand chambers of 1,000 worlds, beings who had never known military defeat struggled to understand what had happened. The Council had ruled for 10,000 years. They had never lost a battle. Now, a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel had destroyed 16 of their warships. On the Council homeworld, Supreme Arbiter Krelthar stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species. His 4 eyes burned with barely contained rage. This cannot stand. We cannot allow these primitives to defy us. If we show weakness now, every species in the galaxy will question our authority. A being made of crystalline structures spoke up. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans clearly possess unexpected capabilities. Negotiation might be wiser than further conflict. Negotiation? Krelthar's voice echoed through the chamber. We gave them a chance to submit peacefully. They chose war. Now we will show them the full might of the Galactic Council. We will make an example that will echo across the stars for 1,000 generations. The vote was unanimous. The Council would deploy the Grand Armada, a fleet of over 500 warships. It was the largest military force assembled in living memory. No species had ever withstood such power. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Marcus Cole stood in the war room beneath the United Space Command headquarters. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship, every colony, every resource. It wasn't much. Humanity had only 42 warships total. Against 500 Council vessels, they stood no chance in a direct fight. "We need more time," said Admiral Kate Brooks. "Our shipyards are producing new vessels as fast as possible. But we need at least 6 months to match their numbers." "We don't have 6 months," General Cole replied. "Our intelligence suggests the Council will launch their attack within weeks." He turned to the woman standing beside him. "Amy, show them what you found." Amy Richardson was 28 years old and had been working in intelligence for only 3 years. But she had a gift for languages and codes. She had spent the last 2 weeks analyzing every scrap of Council communication they had intercepted. "The Council has a problem," Amy said. "They've been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how to really fight. Look at their battle formations." She brought up tactical data from the Proxima Centauri battle. They move in perfect geometric patterns. Beautiful, but predictable. They follow strict protocols about when to fire, when to retreat, when to pursue. "So they're rigid," said Captain Ryan Foster, who had been called back to Earth for the strategy session. "We can use that." "Bird," Amy nodded. "It's more than that. I've been studying their historical records. The Council hasn't fought a real war in over 3,000 years. Every conflict they've had has been what they call a pacification action. They arrive. They demonstrate overwhelming force, and the enemy surrenders. They've never faced an opponent who fought back with everything they had." General Cole understood what she was saying. "They've never experienced total war." "Ah, exactly," Amy said. "They fight to win territory or enforce laws. They try to minimize casualties on both sides. They preserve infrastructure," Amy said. "They have rules about what weapons are acceptable and what tactics are honorable." She paused. "We don't have any of those limitations." A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone understood what that meant. Humanity would have to fight without honor, without mercy, without any restrictions except those they imposed on themselves. "There's something else," Amy continued. "I found records of a Council scientist named Velcora who has been studying Earth. She accessed our historical databases, our military records, everything we've made publicly available." Amy brought up a translated document. This is her report to the Council leadership. She warns them about what she calls humanity's capacity for extreme violence. She describes our world wars, our nuclear standoffs, our genocides. She recommends the Council avoid military conflict with us at all costs. "I'm guessing they ignored her," Captain Foster said. "They dismissed her as paranoid. The Council can't imagine a species that would bomb its own cities or poison its own planet to win a war. They think she's exaggerating. General Cole smiled grimly. Then let's show them she wasn't. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth transformed into a war machine. Every factory that could be converted started producing weapons, ships, and ammunition. Civilian spacecraft were retrofitted with railguns and missile launchers. Mining colonies in the asteroid belt began manufacturing kinetic kill vehicles. Basically just big rocks with engines attached to throw them at enemy ships. Dr. Helen Park, who had survived the destruction of the Aurora, led a team developing new weapons. They worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on them. "Show me what you've got," General Cole said when he visited the research facility. Helen pulled up holographic displays. "Antimatter warheads. We've only managed to produce 12 so far, but each one has the explosive yield of 1,000 nuclear weapons. The Council's ships won't survive a direct hit." "What else?" "AI-controlled drone swarms. Each drone is small, cheap to produce, and carries enough explosives to cripple a Council warship if it gets close enough." "And the nanotech weapon?" Helen hesitated. "That one worries me, General. If we deploy it, we might not be able to control it. The nanobots are programmed to disassemble any ship they attach to, breaking it down to raw atoms. But there's a risk they could spread beyond our intended targets." "Build it anyway," General Cole said. "We may need every weapon we can get." Across human space, tactics were developed that would have horrified the Council. Captain Katie Brooks, one of humanity's best stealth ship commanders, led missions to plant viruses in Council communication networks. The viruses didn't activate immediately. They would wait until the middle of a battle, then start sending false information, creating chaos and confusion. Other teams developed psychological warfare techniques. They created propaganda, showing the Council fleet's defeats, spreading it across alien networks. They wanted the Council species to start questioning their leaders, to doubt their military superiority. Meanwhile, humanity prepared its defenses. The Sol system became a fortress. Thousands of automated defense platforms were deployed around Earth, Mars, and the outer planets. Minefields were laid across every likely approach vector. Massive railgun batteries were built on the Moon and on orbital stations. General Cole addressed Earth's combined military forces via broadcast. "The Council thinks we're primitives. They think our technology is inferior, our tactics are barbaric, and our resistance is futile. They're right about some of that. Our technology is less advanced, but they're wrong about what matters most. They've forgotten what it means to fight for survival. We haven't. Every human who has ever lived has been descended from survivors. We survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and wars. We survived by being tougher, meaner, and more stubborn than anything that tried to kill us. The Council is about to learn that lesson the hard way." On the Council flagship, Velcora watched the preparations for the Grand Armada's departure with growing dread. She had tried to warn them. She had shown them what humans were capable of. But the Council leadership dismissed her concerns. "They're just primitives," Krelthar had told her. "They got lucky at Proxima Centauri. That won't happen again." Velcora knew better. She had studied human history in depth. She had read about their wars, their weapons, their willingness to sacrifice everything to win. She had learned about concepts like mutually assured destruction, scorched earth tactics, and total war. These were ideas that no Council species had considered in thousands of years. The humans had a saying that terrified her. "It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees." The Council offered species a simple choice: submit or die. For 10,000 years, every species had chosen submission. But humans would choose death first, and they would take the Council with them. As the Grand Armada prepared to depart, Velcora made a decision. She sent an encrypted message to the human intelligence networks, to Amy Richardson, specifically. In it, she provided the Council's attack plans, their fleet positions, their communication protocols. Everything that might help humanity survive. It was treason. If she was discovered, she would be executed. But Velcora had come to believe that the Council was wrong. They had grown arrogant and cruel in their power. Maybe they needed to lose. Maybe the galaxy needed someone to stand up to them. She sent the message and waited to see what would happen. Amy Richardson received the encrypted data and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Complete tactical information about the Council's attack. Ship manifests. Officer profiles. Weaknesses in their formation. She ran to General Cole's office. "Sir, you need to see this. I think we might actually have a chance." General Cole read through the data, his expression growing more serious with each page. Finally, he looked up at Amy. "Get this to every ship captain we have, and send a message to whoever sent this to us. Tell them thank you. Tell them that if we win this war, we won't forget what they did." The pieces were in place. The Council was coming with overwhelming force, but humanity was ready. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon pointed at the approaching enemy. The galaxy was about to witness something it hadn't seen in 10,000 years. A real war, fought without rules or mercy, where the only thing that mattered was survival. The Grand Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 500 warships, each one a masterpiece of Council engineering, spread across space in perfect formation. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Supreme Arbiter Krelthar gazed at the blue world in the distance. Earth, the homeworld of the species that had dared to defy the Council. "Scan the system," Krelthar ordered. "I want to know the position of every human ship." His tactical officer worked at the console, then went very still. "Supreme Arbiter, I'm detecting over 3,000 human vessels. Impossible. Our intelligence said they had less than 50 warships." One. "They're not all warships, sir. I'm reading cargo ships, mining vessels, passenger liners. But they've all been fitted with weapons, and there are thousands of automated platforms throughout the system. Sir, the entire Sol system is a fortress." Krelthar stared at the tactical display. The humans had turned everything into a weapon. Civilian ships that should have been running away were instead moving into defensive positions. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was also incredibly dangerous. "No matter," Krelthar said, keeping his voice steady. "They may have numbers, but we have superior technology. All ships, advance. Target their military vessels first. Spare the civilians if possible." The Grand Armada moved forward in stately formation. It was beautiful in a way. 500 ships moving as one. The Council had spent thousands of years perfecting this dance of war. Commander Luke Patterson watched the advancing fleet from the bridge of the UESC Guardian. He was 42 years old, had 3 children back on Earth, and knew he probably wouldn't live to see them again. But that was okay. He was fighting so they could grow up free. "All ships, hold position," Luke ordered. "Wait for them to enter the kill zone." The Council fleet advanced slowly, majestically. They were in no hurry. They believed their victory was inevitable. That confidence would cost them. When the Council fleet crossed the invisible line Luke had designated, he gave the order, "Now, hit them with everything." Space erupted in violence. Thousands of human ships opened fire simultaneously. Railgun slugs, missiles, kinetic kill vehicles, everything humanity could throw at them. The Council's shields lit up like stars as they absorbed the impacts. But this time, the humans had learned. They focused their fire on individual ships, overwhelming one shield at a time. The first Council vessel died within 30 seconds, its shield shattered by concentrated railgun fire, its hull torn apart by nuclear missiles. "Return fire," Krelthar ordered. "All ships engage." The Council fleet fired back with their plasma weapons. Green bolts of superheated matter crossed the void. Human ships died by the dozens. Converted civilian vessels stood no chance against military-grade weapons. They exploded or broke apart, their crews dying in seconds. But for every human ship that died, more took its place. And every human ship that was destroyed managed to inflict damage before it fell. The converted mining ship Prosperity rammed itself into a Council cruiser, detonating its reactor and taking both ships out of the fight. The passenger liner, Freedom of Stars, launched all its escape pods at a Council battleship. Each pod filled with explosives that detonated on impact. Luke Patterson watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The humans were losing more ships, but they were making the Council pay dearly for every inch of space. Deploy the drone swarms. Deploy. Across the human fleet, launch bays opened. Thousands of small automated drones poured out, each one following a simple program. Find a Council ship and destroy it. The drones were too small for the Council's weapons to target effectively, and there were too many to stop them all. They swarmed over Council vessels like angry insects. Most were destroyed by point defense systems, but enough got through. They attached to hulls and detonated their explosive charges. Individually, each drone did minimal damage, but hundreds of them together could cripple even a capital ship. "This is madness," Krelthar's tactical officer said. "They're throwing everything at us, even ships with no military value. Don't they care about casualties?" Krelthar understood then. The humans didn't care about casualties. They cared about winning. Each converted civilian ship that died was a weapon that inflicted damage. The crews knew they were going to die, and they accepted it because their deaths bought time for others to fight. It was the most alien thing Krelthar had ever witnessed. Council species valued life above all else. They would retreat, rather than suffer heavy losses. But humans seemed willing to sacrifice everything. "Deploy the antimatter weapons," Luke Patterson ordered. His ship was taking heavy damage. Plasma bolts had punched through the shields and were eating into the hull. He had minutes left at most. 12 missiles launched from concealed platforms near Jupiter. Each one carried an antimatter warhead, the result of Dr. Helen Park's frantic research. They accelerated toward the Council fleet, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Council's point defense systems shot down 8 of them, but 4 got through. When antimatter meets normal matter, both are converted to pure energy. The 4 explosions lit up the solar system like miniature suns. Each one completely vaporized a Council battleship and everything within 1,000 kilometers. The shockwaves from the blasts disrupted the Council's perfect formation. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the expanding clouds of plasma. In that moment of chaos, the human fleet struck again with coordinated precision. But the Council wasn't defeated yet. Krelthar rallied his forces and pressed forward. The Council ships were tougher, better armed, and better shielded than anything the humans had. Slowly, inevitably, they pushed through the human defenses. Luke Patterson's ship was dying around him. Half the crew was dead. Life support was failing, but he refused to abandon ship. "All remaining power to weapons," he ordered. "Get me a firing solution on that flagship." "Sir, we don't have enough power for shields if we do that. I didn't ask for your opinion." "Do it." The Guardian's railguns fired one last time. 3 slugs of depleted uranium streaked across space and slammed into the shields of Krelthar's flagship. The shields held, but just barely. Then a Council plasma bolt hit the Guardian dead center. The ship came apart in a ball of fire. Luke Patterson died at his post, still issuing orders as the bridge disintegrated around him. But his sacrifice wasn't in vain. The Guardian's attack had weakened the flagship's shields. A swarm of drones got through and detonated against the hull. The flagship took critical damage and had to fall back from the front lines. The battle raged for 6 hours. Ships died on both sides. The space around Earth became a graveyard of burning wrecks and frozen corpses. But slowly, the Council's superior numbers and technology began to tell. The human fleet was being pushed back toward Earth itself. Then, Dr. Chen Liu, watching the battle from a research station near Mars, made a decision. She activated humanity's ultimate weapon, the one they had hoped never to use. The slipspace rupture generators. 10 human ships that had been holding back from the fight suddenly activated experimental drives. Space around them began to twist and tear. Reality itself started to break down in localized areas. The tiers in space expanded outward like hungry mouths, swallowing everything they touched. Council ships caught in the expanding ruptures simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode or break apart. They vanished, erased from reality. Then, 30 more. "Pull back," Krelthar ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships retreat. Get away from those distortions." But the slipspace ruptures were spreading. And they were unstable. One of the human ships, generating them, lost control. The rupture expanded too fast, swallowing the human vessel and a dozen council ships before it finally collapsed. The remaining slipspace generators were shut down before they could cause more damage. But the message was clear. Humans were willing to tear holes in reality itself rather than surrender. Krelthar stared at his tactical display. He had started the battle with 500 ships. Now he had less than 300 combat-capable vessels. The humans had lost more in raw numbers. But they seemed to have an endless supply of ships willing to die for their cause. "Supreme Arbiter, we should retreat and regroup," his second-in-command suggested. "We can request reinforcements and return with even greater numbers." Krelthar wanted to agree. Every instinct told him to pull back, to preserve his forces. But he thought about what would happen if he retreated. The Council would see it as weakness. Other species might be encouraged to rebel. The carefully maintained order of the galaxy would begin to crumble. "No," he said. "We press forward. We end this here and now." But even as he gave the order, Krelthar felt doubt creeping into his mind. The humans fought with a desperation and creativity he had never encountered. They used weapons and tactics the Council had never imagined. They were willing to sacrifice everything, and most terrifying of all, they showed no signs of giving up. Even as their ships burned and their people died, more human vessels kept coming, reinforcements from the outer colonies, converted civilian ships crewed by volunteers. Even small personal craft, armed with whatever weapons their owners could cobble together. On Earth, General Marcus Cole watched the battle through satellite feeds. The casualties were horrific, but they were holding. Against impossible odds, humanity was holding the line. "Send a message to all Council frequencies," he ordered. "Tell them we can keep this up forever. Tell them that every ship they send will destroy. Tell them they can kill every last human in this system, but we'll make them pay for it in blood." The message was sent. Krelthar received it and felt something he hadn't experienced in 200 years of military service. Fear. These humans were serious. They would fight until they were extinct, and they would take the Council with them. The Battle of Sol raged for 3 more days. The space around Earth became a hellscape of burning ships and deadly radiation. But on the 4th day, something changed. The Council fleet began to pull back, not in an organized retreat but in growing disorder. Ships broke formation and fled toward the edge of the system. Krelthar stood on his damaged flagship and watched his Grand Armada fall apart. Of the 500 ships he had brought to Sol, fewer than 150 remained combat-ready. The rest were destroyed or too damaged to fight. And still the humans kept coming, kept fighting, kept dying, with a stubbornness that defied understanding. "Supreme Arbiter, we must retreat," his second-in-command pleaded. "We cannot win this battle." Krelthar wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The humans had won, not through superior technology or tactics, but through sheer willingness to pay any price for victory. "Sound the retreat," he said quietly. "All ships fall back to Council space." But General Marcus Cole had no intention of letting them leave peacefully. "All ships, pursue," he ordered. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, chased the fleeing Council ships. And in the chaos of retreat, Amy Richardson's intelligence teams activated the viruses they had planted in Council communication networks. False orders went out. Ships were directed to wrong coordinates. Reports of human fleet positions were scrambled. The organized Council retreat became a panicked rout. More Council ships died in the confusion than had died in the actual battle. Some collided with each other. Others jumped to faster-than-light travel without proper calculations and emerged inside stars or too close to planets, where gravity tore them apart. Krelthar watched in horror as his proud armada disintegrated. When his ship finally limped back to Council space, he had only 47 vessels with him. The rest were scattered across the galaxy, lost or destroyed. But humanity wasn't finished. They had learned something crucial from captured Council databases. The locations of Council military installations, shipyards, and communication hubs, and they had learned that while the Council had many species under their rule, most of them had been conquered or coerced into submission. President Karen Walsh addressed the United Space Command in an emergency session. The Council tried to destroy us. They failed. Now we have a choice. We can defend our borders and hope they leave us alone, or we can end this threat permanently. The vote wasn't even close. Humanity chose to attack. Human fleets appeared across Council space in coordinated strikes. They targeted military facilities, not civilian populations. Humanity hadn't forgotten its own moral code, even in war, but they showed no mercy to Council military forces. Commander Greg Allen led the assault on the Council's largest shipyard, a massive orbital facility that had been building warships for 1,000 years. His fleet arrived without warning and launched everything they had. The shipyard's defenders were unprepared for the ferocity of the human attack. Within hours, the facility was a burning wreck. Similar scenes played out across Council territory. Military bases were destroyed. Communication networks went dark. The Council's ability to coordinate their forces collapsed, but the most devastating weapon humanity deployed wasn't physical. It was psychological. They broadcast the truth about the Battle of Sol across every Council communication network. They showed footage of the Grand Armada's defeat. They revealed the Council's losses, and they sent a simple message to every species under Council rule. The Council is not invincible. They can be defeated. If you want freedom, take it. We will help you. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Species that had chafed under Council rule for centuries saw their chance. Rebellions erupted on 100 worlds. The Council tried to suppress them, but their military was shattered, their leadership in chaos. On the Council homeworld, Supreme Arbiter Krelthar was stripped of his rank and imprisoned. The Council called it punishment for his failure, but everyone knew they needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for the disaster that had befallen them. A new delegation was formed to seek peace with humanity. It was led by Sylveth, a diplomat who had studied humans extensively. She understood better than most what a mistake the Council had made. The delegation arrived at Earth and requested an audience. President Walsh met them in Geneva, in the same room where the Council had delivered their first ultimatum. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Sylveth bowed her head in a gesture of submission. We come to sue for peace. The Council acknowledges its error in declaring war on humanity. We wish to negotiate terms for ending hostilities. President Walsh studied the alien diplomat carefully. You started this war with ultimatums and threats. You tried to make us your subjects. Now you want peace? We were arrogant, Sylveth admitted. We believed our technology and our long history made us superior. We were wrong. Humanity has taught us a harsh lesson. What are you offering? Sylveth presented a datapad. The Council will dissolve its military forces and accept human observers in our government. We will pay reparations for the damage our attacks caused. We will recognize human sovereignty over all territory you claim. We will never threaten your species again. President Walsh read through the terms. They were harsh, but fair. And if we refuse these terms? If we decide to continue the war until the Council is completely destroyed? Sylveth met her gaze. Then the Council will fight to the last ship. We may not be able to defeat you, but we can make victory very costly. Billions will die on both sides. Is that what you want? It was a good question. President Walsh thought about all the humans who had already died. The crew of the Aurora, Commander Luke Patterson, and thousands like him who had sacrificed everything. Did their deaths demand more bloodshed? Or would peace honor their sacrifice better? I'll bring your terms to the United Nations, President Walsh said. But I want something else. I want the Council to release every species you've conquered. Give them the choice to govern themselves. That would mean the end of the Council as an institution. Yes, it would. You claimed to bring order to the galaxy. But your order was built on oppression and threats. It's time for something better. If your order, the negotiations took 3 months. In the end, a treaty was signed. The Council agreed to all of humanity's demands. Their military was disbanded. Human peacekeepers occupied key Council worlds to ensure compliance. And across the galaxy, dozens of species gained their independence. Commander Greg Allen walked through the streets of the Council homeworld's capital city. His troops maintained order while the Council government reorganized itself. It felt strange being an occupying force. Humanity had spent so much of its history fighting against empires and occupation. Now, they were the occupiers. But the Council civilians didn't seem hostile. They seemed relieved. Many of them had been conscripted into military service or forced into supporting a war they didn't believe in. Now that it was over, they just wanted to live their lives in peace. A young Council child approached Greg, holding out what looked like a flower made of crystal. "Thank you," the child said in halting English. "My father was a soldier. He died in your war, but he sent a message before he died. He said he was glad the war would end, that his death might mean peace." Greg took the crystal flower carefully. "I'm sorry about your father. War is terrible. We lost many people too." "Will you hurt us?" the child asked. "Now that you won?" Greg knelt down to the child's level. "No, we're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to make sure the fighting stops and stays stopped. Then we'll go home." Across the galaxy, Velcora watched the occupation with a mixture of relief and sadness. The Council she had known all her life was gone, broken by its own arrogance. But maybe that was necessary. Maybe the galaxy needed this change. She thought about the data she had sent to the humans. Her treason had helped them win, had saved countless lives on both sides by shortening the war. She expected to be executed when her role was discovered. Instead, the new Council government asked her to serve as an ambassador to Earth. On Earth, Jake Morrison stood on the rebuilt colony on Proxima Centauri B. He watched human and alien children playing together under the light of the red dwarf star. A new generation was growing up in a galaxy that had been forever changed. The Aurora was gone, his crew scattered or dead. But the dream they had died for lived on. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not through submission but through the strength to resist tyranny. Dr. Helen Park visited the military cemetery where the war dead were buried. Thousands of graves, each one representing someone who had given everything for humanity's freedom. She placed flowers on Commander Luke Patterson's memorial. He had died at his post, still fighting, still giving orders, even as his ship came apart around him. "We won," she said quietly to the stone. "We paid a terrible price, but we won." General Marcus Cole retired from military service 6 months after the treaty was signed. He had spent his entire career preparing for war, fighting war, and ending war. Now he wanted peace. In his retirement speech, he said, "We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us by beings who couldn't imagine that anyone would refuse their demands. We fought because we had no choice. We won because we were willing to do whatever it took to survive. But victory doesn't feel the way I thought it would. Every ship we destroyed had a crew. Every enemy we killed had a family. War is never glorious. It's just necessary sometimes. I hope humanity never forgets the cost we paid for our freedom. President Karen Walsh worked to build a new galactic order. Instead of one species ruling over others, she pushed for a council of equals, where every species had a voice. It was slow work, building trust between species that had been enemies, but it was important work. The council species learned to live without their empire. Some adapted well, embracing the new freedom and equality. Others struggled, unable to understand a galaxy where they weren't in charge. A few small groups tried to resist, to rebuild the old order. But they found no support. Too many species remembered what the Council's rule had been like. Humanity became the unexpected peacekeepers of the galaxy. Not through conquest, but through the simple fact that everyone had seen what happened when they were pushed too far. No species wanted to provoke humans into war again. It was a strange kind of peace, built on fear and respect in equal measure. Sylveth visited Earth 5 years after the war ended. She had become one of the leading voices for reform in council space. She spoke at universities, explaining what the council had done wrong and how they were trying to build something better. In a lecture at Oxford, a student asked her, "What did you learn from humanity?" Sylveth thought carefully before answering. "I learned that arrogance is the most dangerous weakness a civilization can have. The council believed we were superior because we were older, because we had better technology. We forgot that what matters isn't how advanced you are, but whether you're willing to fight for what you believe in. Humans were less advanced than us in every measurable way, but they had something we had lost over thousands of years of easy dominance. They had the will to resist, the courage to defy us, and the strength to make us pay for our arrogance." She paused, looking out at the students. "The council declared war on humanity, thinking we would crush them easily. Instead, we triggered our own downfall. Not because humans destroyed us with superior weapons, but because they showed the entire galaxy that the council could be defeated. That truth destroyed our empire more effectively than any weapon could have." As the decades passed, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Trade flourished between species. Cultural exchanges happened. The old borders and restrictions fell away. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements. But they were solved through negotiation instead of conquest. And on Earth, humanity looked to the stars with new confidence. They had proven themselves against the greatest empire the galaxy had known. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they could face them. The Council had wanted to make humanity submit. Instead, they had freed the galaxy from tyranny. It wasn't the legacy they had intended, but it was the one they deserved.